Now we begin a 4-hour conversation. We're going to squeeze into 7 minutes with Libby Cantrill of Pimco. I've really been waiting for it. I'm going to cut to the chase. If Tom Hanks had to make a war movie, he'd make it out of John Thune's father. Thune in South Dakota grew up in a family. His father won the Distinguished Flying Cross, like the real deal in the Pacific. John Thune came, the typical political life, star athlete. Where in God's name, Libby Cantrill, are the GOP and the good senator of South Dakota?
As it relates to trade?
Trade?
Yes.
Well, where are they?
Well, I think first of all, I think privately there is a lot of pushback
to
the
not
White House.
time to be private.
However, Tom, I think it just underscores the fact that Congress does not have a lot of levers here.
Why?
Because they intentionally bequeathed delegated tariff authority to the president through various trade acts. 1962, the Trade Act of 1974, IEPA of 1977.
So you're saying they can't go back to what they had?
Well, they can, but they would need a super majority. They would need 2/3 of each chamber in order to override what would inevitably be a veto. So I think there is a practical element here, a practical constraint in terms of Congress.
One more question. Sweeney's looking at me like, Tom, can I get a word in here? Let me cut to the chase. Did Trump lose the GOP House in the Rose Garden?
Look, no. I don't think so.
Wow.
I think this speaks to the fact that this party is the party of Trump. And many folks in the House have the president to thank for even being there in the first place. And so this is why I think there's been a real reluctance to push back in public. Again, there is some private pushback. But again, I think this is a worldview that President Trump has had for 40 years. This is what we keep telling our clients. And he ran on this. He believes he has a mandate to fulfill this. He believes that there's a lot of unfinished business from the first administration. And I think that the market obviously wants to maybe see through this or hope that there is something, this will result in a different outcome. But our view is tariff rates are going to be going up, and that will have a headwind on growth and likely have implications for inflation. To the degree is going to depend on the stickiness of all of this, obviously. But I think that it is naive to think that we are not going to see probably significantly higher tariff levels.
And President Trump has been very clear that he views the U.S. trade deficit as the effective scorecard between the U.S. and the rest of the world. And that scorecard shows a deficit of $1 trillion. Is that the right way to look at it? Is that a fair analysis?
This is what what I tell our traders as well. It is really not our kind of role to editorialize or to judge whether this is good economic policy or bad economic policy. What we think is, in terms of providing alpha for our clients, is what is likely to happen, not what should happen. So we may quibble about whether the trade deficit is the right scorecard, is the right metric. But the president is very focused on, and it's not even the trade deficit writ large, it is the goods trade deficit. So it is very specific, and he has this very specific metric for success. And again, people may disagree with that. That's fine. But that is not going to change, I think, what is likely going to be the outcome, which is he is going to be focused on that as a metric of sort of future success.
And one could argue that to balance potentially those economic headwinds that would result from higher tariffs, he and his administration need that tax policy to go through quickly. Is that something? How do you guys handicap the? Yeah,
so I do think that is going to be a big pivot and a big sort of shift in focus, if you will. It already has been. Obviously, the House and the Senate are kind of working through the machinations of the very kind of tedious legislative process. I would not underestimate Trump's bully pulpit here, though, in terms of getting this through. I think what you're looking at is, there's these different budget resolutions that sort of set up for the broader tax bill. They're quite different. But I think at the end of the day, Trump will get what he wants in terms of the tax bill. And that is where the GOP is.
Maya McGinnis was with us yesterday or the day before. I'm sorry, it's a blur, folks. And the basic idea is Libby Cantrill says they're just going to overlay more debt on the deficit.
Yes.
Deficit on the debt. I can't remember which it is.
Yes, overlay the deficit on the debt, yes. Look, but I think a couple of things, Tom, is that tariffs do generate revenue. And so if they are the sort of maximalist approach on tariffs, there could be actually pretty significant revenue coming into the Treasury coffers. Now, I don't think that's going to go to pay down debt. I think that is literally going to go to pay for more tax cuts. But that can, in terms of growth, balance out some of these sort of cross currents, that we've been talking about with our clients.
So President Trump and his the folks that speak for him are talking about the number of countries that are lining up to negotiate deals with the U.S. Is that something that you guys think will be successful? I mean, are we going to get a lowering of some of the expectations for tariffs, or should we just kind of layer in a base level and go from there?
Well, so I think, my view is that sort of the destination here, at a minimum, is that we see a universal 10% tariff, that we see sectoral tariffs on chips and pharma and autos and what have you. And then we see these elevated tariffs on China.
So when you say that to your managers, quickly here, when you say that to your managers, how do they respond?
They say
Bond
that,
and equity.
Yeah, headwind to growth and maybe a little bit of upward pressure on inflation. But we think this is more of a growth story than it is.
Okay. Are you making an inflation call here? I got to make some news here.
No.
Joining us, the economist.
We're not. I am
Libby
actually
Cantrill.
not trying to make news.
So is Pimco talking about an inflation vector, or can they actually turn it around down the road to a lower growth, disinflationary
Well,
vector?
and I think a question. Well, I think this is, and again, not to not commit here, but I do think this is going.
We want that.
This could be an increase in the price level, a one-time increase. I think obviously it depends on what happens to inflation expectations. Inflation obviously has been high, so this could feed into increased inflation expectations. But we really do think the story here is on the growth side than the inflation
Agreed.
side.
I must. I mean, I'm seeing a few people model out negative nominal GDP, which is like back to England, 1930s.
Yeah, I don't think we're that far. Again, you
Right.
do have these cross currents in terms of policy. If you're just looking at tariffs alone, it looks very bad.
Right.
But if you're actually, layering in some of the tax cuts, tax
Okay.
policy certainty, and all of that, it may be a little bit more of a complicated
Libby
picture.
Cantrill, thanks so much. I don't agree with anything you said. Libby Cantrill,
Thanks, Tom.
thank you so much with Pimco. We'll see what the Republicans do in the House.